Hello, and welcome to the AI Guides podcast. My name is John Stroud, and I'm joined by my friend.
Hi, my name is Hanan. And yeah, I guess I'll just do a bit of a background of myself. So I'm more of a technical person, and but I'm also more interested in the human side of AI. And but we're really focused on how small to medium-sized businesses can really leverage and use and understand AI. So it's not really a scary term for them, and they can really start to adopt it and see the gains from it that both John and I have been seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And so these are the questions that we get asked all the time. And so we want to start making some videos about trying to answer some of these questions. And so one thing that comes up is there's this tension or this seeming paradox. There's individuals who will tell you that it makes a huge difference in their life, that there's these huge productivity gains. But if you talk to business owners, they're not seeing it. So, Hannah, do you get this from people?
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of like the way that it was framed in the article that we were both reading was that it's not necessary. There could be two reasons. One of them, and there could be two hypotheses. One of them could be that at the individual the gains that we're seeing at the individual level are not rolling up to the enterprise level. And there could be just because of the way that the organization itself is structured. So that could and even if some processes can be automated really quickly or they can be done really quickly, there's just other processes that take a lot of time and they're kind of they're the processes that are holding the organization back. But the other I think point that the author was trying to make in the article was that people are just not being honest and they're afraid of disclosing their use of AI. So they're underreporting how much AI actually benefits them because they're afraid of being judged by their manager or their boss for not quote unquote doing the work.
Right.
Uh, so I think there's kind of two kind of like threads there.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's take a look at the people first. So when people say that they're able to do tasks twice as fast or three times as fast, are they wrong? Are they lying when they say that?
Absolutely not. I think that like many of the tasks, if you've used AI at all, like, for more than 10 minutes, you can see that many of the tasks that you see, for instance, like, just like writing and editing emails, even I write a lot of code. So just writing code, the nature of writing software design, like designing software and doing software engineering has completely changed. Even a lot of data analysis and Excel and spreadsheet works. You can do it a lot more quickly by using AI. Like I would say that's like maybe 5 times faster. And then other tasks that would take, they're not fun things to do like summarizing a meeting or taking notes. You can do them a lot more faster. So I think there's a number of tasks if you know how to use AI properly that you can see immediate gains in.
So, summarizing text, generating new text, working with financial documents, working with numbers, and working with code. Individuals all seeing significant improvements on how they do it. And I know there's been studies that measure these improvements at anywhere from like 25% to 75%. But if anything, I suspect that those numbers are probably too low because when those studies were done, these were on like previous versions of ChatGPT, right?
Exactly. The study that I believe Ethan Malik quotes. I'm not sure if he's one of the authors of that study, but I know he references it in his article. It uses ChatGPT 4, which is not even available on OpenAI's website anymore. So it's a completely outdated model. And I used ChatGPT 4 a lot when it came out, and it was a great model for that time. But I wouldn't want to, if I use it today, I would be very disappointed. So I think the studies we're going to see a lot those numbers significantly higher for the next set of studies that come out, and they're probably being conducted right now. And also, the nature of the tools themselves have changed. For example, like deep research didn't exist. I think it came out at the beginning of this year, so it didn't exist like 6 months ago, and that itself is a complete like different step function change in how you can leverage AI.
So lots of studies showing significant individual improvement on old tools that have now been replaced by even better tools. And so we expect that there really is individual productivity gains. Plus, the gains that people have are maybe not reported. Ethan Malik talks about the idea of a secret cyborg. Do you tell people what that is?
Well, I think that I think in that I don't exactly remember him using that. I don't remember the exact point he was trying to make. But I think the core idea, and I've seen a number of people make this point, is that the way that we refer to AI, for instance, if you are working, the way that we treat AI versus working with human collaborators is very different. So, for example, if you're writing with the help of a human editor, you are collaborative, you are responsible, it's seen as a completely like legitimate form of assistance. But if you're writing with the help of AI, people people have this narrative, there's a narrative of you're lazy, you're cheating, it's
Cheating.
inauthentic somehow, you're cutting corners, you're taking shortcuts rather than learning. And there's a fundamental view that people have of AI that they don't have of other human beings. If you just ask another person to assist you with that task, they might be a lot worse at doing that task for you. It wouldn't be like, you wouldn't view yourself that way. So I think that's from what I understand, I think that was a core point that he was trying to make.
Yeah, and so given that there's this negative connotation around using it, people who really are more productive are not disclosing that
Right,
they're doing it. And so if anything, the benefits to individuals are probably undercounted.
right.
So then on the other side, there's the company point of view. Like from their perspective, are they seeing enterprise-wide benefits yet?
Yeah, I think companies are really struggling to translate those individual gains into those enterprise-wide gains. Like there are examples, like more recently, like we've seen layoffs across a number of tech companies, and many people have cited. I don't know if these are official like statements by these companies that like AI might be the reason why these layoffs are happening. So maybe that may be one example, but most widely, if you actually look at the studies done by these sort of large consulting companies, uh, on a large scale, like there's a huge discrepancy between the numbers of the overall, company efficiency versus the individual efficiency, and there's a huge gap between the two.
So when individuals say they're getting better, they're not lying, right? That's their reality. And
Mhm.
when businesses say, but we're not seeing any difference in our overall enterprise improvement, they're not lying. So how do we square these 2 points of the individual versus the enterprise? Look, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think coming back to the point of seeing AI like as this sort of as a way of like kind of cheating, I think I've heard like a number of other people, I forget exactly who I heard say this, that the AI is actually like a disservice to the term, like it might not like and the vocabulary. I think the deeper point was was that the vocabulary that we used can really impact our relationship with that technology. And this person proposed this idea of collective intelligence would be a lot more far more accurate. And if you just strip away LLMs, in the essence, they're just a much better way of using statistics to aggregate, all of human intelligence essentially and connect all of things together so we can get more out of what we're doing. And again, if you're working with a human like editor, you're collaborative. But if you're working with the help of AI, like that's not how you view yourself. But if you thought about it from like a collective intelligence point, you would be resourceful, and because you're leveraging the best of human knowledge. In fact, I would, like it would be you would go far, you would go as far to say that if you weren't using that, if you had access to I don't know like a George Orwell level editor or like Joan Didion, like pick your favorite editor, they're almost as good. They're much better than I am, and they were in the room with you, and you weren't using them and you weren't leveraging them, you would be like and you would be doing a disservice. So I think that's the fundamental kind of like I think the way that people view AI it needs to kind of fundamentally change. There needs to be a shift because, and that's kind of what leads to the secret cyborg effect, where people might not actually be, they might be using AI secretly, but they're not, but they're afraid of disclosing it because they feel guilty about it.
And then another thing, within an organization, like suppose you use the AI to generate marketing copy, or you use it to generate a research report. There's a whole workflow that has to take place. If you solve one bottleneck, because it used to take a day to get this done, and now you can do it in an hour, you've got this efficiency. But there's still other steps in the process that have to unfold. And you might just simply be moving the bottleneck from one station in the workflow to somewhere else. So I think for business owners who are thinking, this is being done so much faster, why am I not seeing the result? It comes back to, I think, well, just because the email messages are written faster or the research report is done better, you still need to decide, well, who does this marketing copy go to? Or what's the research report for? Or we can generate code, but what type of code do we need to generate? Those are still leadership problems that companies need to figure out, and AI is not going to solve that for them.
Exactly. I think there will always be, it removes many bottlenecks. A lot of tasks that take a it just moves the bottleneck from some tasks to other bottlenecks that weren't bottlenecks before. So I think we fundamentally need to, like businesses that want to take advantage of AI need to fundamentally rethink of how they organize, their organizations, and really understand the new bottlenecks. Once you do have uh, your employees that can leverage AI effectively, it will just create new bottlenecks for your organization. And I think it's a very important to kind of analyze that aspect of the because you're still going to have trouble translating those individual gains into the organization gains.
Right. And so if you're a leader of of a small business and you're wondering like what you can do, one thing is around the vision that you can share with your team. But what's the future of AI? What's the future that we have with AI in our organization? And people may have seen the notices that came out from Shopify and Duolingo about how they're going to evolve. For instance, Toby at Shopify said, don't come asking for new resources anymore until you can prove that AI can't do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there needs to be leadership from the top down, where you need to, like, leaders must first empower and not punish their employees for using AI because it does make them more efficient. And then there needs to be a rethinking of the fundamental work processes as AI replaces it will replace, and it already has replaced specific tasks within a job, but it hasn't replaced the entire job. And you still need somebody to validate the outputs of the model and take responsibility of that. So that's one component. The other one is that maybe you have individuals that are using AI individually inside of an organization, but they're not sharing their use publicly. But if they were to share their what things that they learn or the processes they've built, it would just make the organization itself much more efficient. So that's one. So that's another dimension. But I think it just comes down to addressing the fear and that employees might have of their job security, and that's why they might be, and that really has to be addressed from the leadership perspective.
So leaders considered a view of this is how our company can evolve, and this is about us like growing the business and feel comfortable around that as opposed to we're just going to use this as a way to eliminate jobs. That's going to make people more comfortable. And
Exactly.
and then there's your early adopters who are already using AI all the time. You want them to be sharing what they're learning with other colleagues, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. And then I guess there's the later adopters, the people who aren't currently using AI and they're not quite sure how it fits in. Like, what can organizations do for them?
Yeah, I think that like I think they need to place proper incentives and psychological safety nets to share and the use and encourage the use of AI and not make it this kind of scary thing. So I think that's the thing that leaders need to do is to create the incentives for people to actually use and share their knowledge of AI and actually reward those people. Um, but I would say that like coming back to how you can discover how AI can make your business more efficient. In the article, I'm not sure if it was this particular article, but I've heard many people mention, and also we have talked about this of how using sort of this ambidextrous or like this dual approach of using AI, where we both are exploring future possibilities of if when these models become more powerful, what tasks will they be able to do that currently are not possible yet, but also exploiting the current capabilities of what tasks are already like what tasks can already be automated or done a lot more efficiently with the use of LLMs. And another thing that I think I picked up from this article was building specific benchmarks for the organization's tasks. Because when you look at a lot of benchmarks, these generic benchmarks for any new large language model that comes out, they are very general tasks. They're very general reasoning tasks. They're very general math tasks or coding tasks. But those benchmarks might not be aligned, or they most certainly are not generally aligned to your specific business needs. I think building, and this is more for an intermediate to more mature organization, building actual benchmarks for how you can determine if the model can actually do this task, and it will be a probabilistic kind of thing where it can get it done maybe like 60% of the time, and the other 40% it fails. But having those sort of benchmarks is really important because that's what really allows you to have the confidence to move forward with AI solutions.
Right. So employees are not lying when they say that it's making them better. Businesses are not crazy when they say that we're just not seeing the results. It's because solving one problem, if you solve one bottleneck, you just might be pushing it along to someplace else in the workflow. And so if you're a leader, you need to set a direction to your team on this is where we're going. We want to be AI first. We need to rethink our processes. It's not just necessarily doing a step in the process more efficient, but now that AI is available, how do we rethink
Mhm.
what the process should be and bring in your people along, whether they're already experimenting, get them to share their ideas, and if they're not comfortable, help them make them be more comfortable with using it. Like that's kind of the recipe of what leaders should be doing for their teams, right?
Exactly. And I think that a lot of existing organizational innovations muscles have atrophied, or they can atrophy. And this is something that companies can't fully like outsource. Because there doesn't exist you know, there doesn't exist a playbook. Everyone, including the AI companies, is figuring this out together.
Yeah.
So speed really matters, so the competitive advantage goes out to those who can learn the fastest and adapt. And it's just an organizational learning challenge. Both, it's not really a technical challenge like the discussion we've been having here, but it's it's more of an organizational learning challenge, and success really requires feedback loops between all of these components, between the employees, between the leadership, and also the models and the systems you're using.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that yeah, you need to know the technology, but nobody knows your business better than you do. And nobody's going to be able to figure out how it's going to come in and work in your business than you and your employees. So encourage them to be part of the journey with you and figure out how it's going to work in your particular company. And you talked about moving flexibly and moving quickly. This is one thing, like if you're a small business and you have a rapid decision making process, this is an opportunity for smaller companies as opposed to the very big ones, right?
Exactly. And I think that that's kind of the core point that I've heard a lot of people make is that these tools are fundamentally changing what it means to do quote unquote work. And you could say even more philosophically, these tools are changing what it means to be a quote unquote human being. But
Yeah.
when you begin using these tools, like you actually end up discovering a profound gap between what you expected and what the reality what that of you what you actually end up experiencing. And one of those first things I discovered was that at first, when you begin using AI, you expect it to reduce all of your workload, and you think you're going to have a lot of free time. And I think that's what a lot of people think when they first begin using AI. But instead, there's like this weird paradox. You realize that you get caught in this weird paradox where the amount of work that is that 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 was not possible but that was worth exciting and worth doing actually greatly exceeds the amount of time you're saving using AI. And so yeah, so I think AI just like it changes the nature of work itself. It becomes a lot more it becomes a lot more experimental. You can experiment with a lot different ideas, but also it expands what's possible and it raises the expectations, and it actually ends up creating more work if you actually end up using AI.
Yeah, there's always more problems to solve. As humans, we have like an endless supply of problems that we want solved. So you can do more with AI and you can solve more problems with it.
Exactly, and I think I heard like a talk. Someone mentioned that that they saw we saw a similar pattern in the 20th century where there was this explosion of labor-saving technologies like like fridges and washing machines and dishwashers and vacuums, and theoretically all of these tools should have reduced housework, but like women in 1960s were spending more time doing housework than there were in the 1920s.
Hmm.
And I think according to that, I thought it was a really interesting point because there was just so much more to do.
Yeah.
So I think the core point is that technology just doesn't make old tasks easier. It actually creates an entirely new standard. And it doesn't exist in a vacuum. We respond to technology, and the better technology is, the higher your expectations get, and the more work there is to do. Uh, so I think that's like a loop that I've seen kind of play out, and I think historically it was interesting seeing other examples of that too.
So if I'm a business leader and I get to the end of this video, I'm thinking, so the takeaways from me would be set a vision for my team about how we're going to integrate AI into the business. Bring my employees along, whether they're the early adopters or the late adopters, and listen to their different needs. And maybe start by looking at a single process and imagining not just how can we do a single step within that faster, but now that we have AI, can we do the work in a different way? How does that sound? Anything else that they should do?
Yeah, and I think that like another common mistake people make when they're beginning to use AI is that they assume that AI is going to like democratize expertise and everyone is going to become an expert writer and designer. And to a degree, that's true, and that's very much true. But I think that like the technical barriers are crumbling. But what I discovered is having used AI a lot, I use it every single day, to shape the inputs and evaluate and to evaluate the outputs you still need expertise. And LLMs are really impacted by every word you input. If the person inputs a very generic prompt, and if person A inputs a very generic prompt, and person B has expertise to add context, and they also understand how to use AI. They know that asking the AI to generate multiple variations is really going to help them, pressure test that model, and they have that kind of know-how. The two responses that we're going to get are going to be wildly different, even though we're using the exact same tool. And I think that's also a discrepancy we might have seen where some people have, completely two different point of views of AI. One person experiences it like, as they're like, it's meh. And the other person's like, this is an amazing tool. And I think like, and I think the key thing here, it's not the tool, it's the person operating the tool, and they need to be trained on how to actually use the tool.
So a lot of success comes down to it's not just the tool, but what environment are you setting it up with? How do you approach it in your company? What's your culture? And then how do individual people, how do they make use of the tool? So, but the bottom line, when people say they're getting more productive, they are. And companies, they could be more productive if they were to change the way that they work with the technology. And it's not just about the technology, it's about those other factors that we talked about.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's good enough for our first talk.
Yeah, we can wrap it up there.
Okay, cheers, thanks. Till next time.